Hey, sales leaders. I spend a lot of time talking to you about hiring Rockstar sales reps. So today I wanted to tell you a story about the time I got it right and hired a rockstar. His name is James. James stumbled into my conference room, full of life, big as life, biggest personality I had seen in quite some time. I took to James right away. I was super impressed. I had a pretty formulaic sales process, even back then. This was probably 20 years ago. So I ran him through all the rigors, phone screen, then I made him come in and interview with me in person, then I made him interview with other executives at the company. I ran him through an assessment before finally giving him the offer and telling him I'd love to have him come on board. He was as excited as I was. Got James into the office on the first week, started doing training, and then about day 3 or 4, he popped into my doorway. And he said, "Hey, do you have a minute?" I said, "Sure, I do." Came in, he closed the door, he sat down across from me. As you know, these are the things that makes your heart jump out. I didn't see an envelope in his hand or a piece of paper, so I was feeling okay, confident that he wasn't gonna quit on week 1. And he wasn't. Oh, I was so relieved. He said to me, "Hey, I was wondering if you would be willing to buy me a software program." And I was like, well, we had Salesforce as a CRM system. It really doesn't get any better than that. I'm like, well, what would you like me to buy you? And he said, Dragon Naturally Speaking. And I got this look on my face. I was like, what are you talking about? I thought to myself. I had no idea what he was talking about. So I said, I don't know what Dragon Naturally Speaking is. He said, well, it's software that's going to allow me to talk into the computer, put my notes in verbally as opposed to typing them out. And I was like, oh, okay. Like we call it talk to text today. But again, this was almost 20 years ago. So I was like, well, why would you need that? And then James disclosed to me something that still today floors me. James had a learning disability. He had dyslexia. He really didn't read and was not about to be able to type his notes into the CRM system. His dyslexia was so challenging for him that he'd gone through college with a proctor, someone who sat next to him in every single class that he took notes for him, and actually took the tests with him, meaning they actually filled in the answers on the piece of paper as he dictated it to them. I'm not kidding. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. And so I said, well, sure, I'd be happy to buy you Dragon Naturally Speaking, but can I ask you a question? He's like, yeah. And I said, how on earth have you gotten to where you are today with such a severe learning disability? And he smiles and he's like, come on, really? And I was like, no, really? He's like, my charisma, of course. He was like, I charmed my way through school. I charmed my way through college. He's like, yeah, sure, I had a proctor, but you know what? Sometimes I just needed the teacher to lean a little bit to the right. Like 79.3 is really 80.1. And I was like, oh, now I get it. I was like, the same way you came into my conference room, larger than life, was how you went through life. Again, traits can't be taught. They're intrinsic. They're normally formulated by the time someone's 10. And boy, did James have to work on that. But I could just see it now. I could see him buttering up the teachers in elementary school and bringing them apples and making sure that he got through life the way that he needed to get through life. And you know what? We talk a lot about picking the right sales role. The fact of the matter is, James picked the right profession. Sales was perfect for him. Why? Because his personality was so big. People loved him. Everyone loved James. James also had a lot of confidence, which, again, makes my heart so big to even talk about it. Here's someone who was sort of behind the 8 ball all through life. Can you imagine not being able to really read or write as well as everybody else and still coming out on top? In fact, in some cases, earning more than the average person on the street? James's confidence was so big that his signature file at the bottom of every email said, my second favorite word is no. I steal this line all the time, but I give James credit because you know what? James knew that maybe's got him nowhere. Yes was always what he wanted to hear, but he'd rather hear no than maybe. And he wrote that every single time someone opened an email, they saw his tagline. Today, James sells God and not software anymore. And I couldn't be any prouder of him. He took a very, very challenging personal situation and built traits around it that made him perfect for whether he sold software or he's selling God. So there's theory and there's practice. Sales leaders, I talk a lot about how to hire Rockstar sales reps. So let me give you a story about a time when it didn't really go that well for me. I was pretty early in my sales leadership career at a SaaS company, and I interviewed and fell in love with two amazing women. We all know that women are hard to come by, and particularly hunter women are hard to come by. So I was so excited when I found Shannon and Melissa. Couldn't wait for them to start. Just as I suspected, they were bright, articulate, interested. They blew through onboarding. We moved at a very fast pace. I got them on the phone really quickly, and they had some immediate success. Things were going great. They were setting appointments, they were getting deals into their pipeline, they were starting to even close a few deals. And I was like, yep, I just knew it right from the start. These were gonna be my next superstar sales reps. And they were doing great, and everything is fine for about the first 90 to 120 days. Then, nothing. And I mean nothing. I mean, for the next 60 days, neither of them sold anything. Well, again, taking it upon myself to fix the problem, I decided to double down on my coaching. I spent more time with them. I listened to more calls. I had more meetings. I did more training. I was sure that I could fix the problem. And then one day, Shannon said to me, you know what? I really love talking to the prospects, but the thought of handing them off to somebody else and not being able to talk to them again, kind of makes me sad. And I was like, what? Oh no, I knew exactly what had happened. I had mishired Shannon and possibly even Melissa. Shannon had just told me that she was a farmer. She didn't want to give birth to the baby. She wanted to raise the baby. She wanted to be there for every single milestone, for drop off on preschool first day, for kindergarten graduation, for junior high graduation, for high school graduation. She wanted to be there when her baby walked down the aisle. She wanted to be there in the delivery room when her first grandchild came into the earth. Oh no, she is not a hunter, my friends. She was a farmer. How did I get fooled? Well, okay, so I was early in my career, but remember, professional sales reps are professional interviewees, so buyer beware. Shannon was all the things I thought she was, and she really could have been a hunter, but she just didn't love it. It wasn't in her blood. She didn't like the short-term relationship that hunters deal with on a day-to-day basis. So, good news. I had a customer success manager position open. So I moved her over, and yep, guess what? She shined. She hit all of the goals that we wanted her to hit. She was hitting 120% net retention rate. Customers loved her. She was expanding and upselling, and she was so much happier. Well, after I figured this out, I approached Melissa. I'm like, oh no, did I make the same mistake twice? Yeah, you know what? It turns out that I had. Now, Melissa didn't become the Rockstar customer success rep that Shannon did, and she actually left our company pretty early on after that. But I had put her in the wrong seat on the bus. I set her up to fail, and that was my fault. I really didn't dig deep enough or ask enough questions. Now, the women were a little bit younger as well, and sometimes you don't know yourself well enough when you're still in your 20s. So I think it was a combination of bad things coming together all at once. Me being new, them being young, trying to figure it all out. The good news is, once I did figure it out, I had a spot for Shannon that I could move her into right away. And you know what? I learned a valuable lesson. I learned that I needed to spend a little more time interviewing than I had done. I am happy to report that, 20 plus years later, Shannon is now a top-level executive at that company. She took that position as a customer success manager and rose through the ranks, and now she sits at what I affectionately call the Knights of the Round Table. I am so proud of her, but I'm also proud of myself for being big enough to say I had made a mishire. Good news, I was able to put her in the right spot. I hope this has been helpful. Me being a little transparent and vulnerable with you about my mishires, and trust me, Shannon and Melissa weren't the only ones over my 20+ career as a sales leader. But hopefully you've learned something, and maybe it's caused you to stop and pause. Maybe you actually have a sales rep on your team today that's in the wrong seat on the bus. So if you're brave enough, drop me a line in the comments or connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a message and let me know about your mishire story, or maybe the one that you're in the process of correcting today. Thank you so much. Until next time.